What's up YouTube, and welcome to the Anabolic Outpost. In this edition, I will be showing off my Anabolic Blueberry French Toast Bake. I'm sure if you are watching this, you are already familiar with Anabolic French Toast yourself. And I've even posted a French Toast Bake recipe before, but it was one of my first videos, and this one is going to be a completely different flavor. And with there being so many variations that you could make of this definitely will not be the last French Toast Bake recipe on my channel. This bake is awesome as it is a single serving, but unlike your standard French toast, it's just a quick mix away and then you could throw it in the oven. Rather than having to monitor it on the stove, you could do whatever and go about your day until the oven goes off and then it is time for breakfast. And as always, before we get into the cooking, I just want to take a quick moment to go over the ingredients you will need to make this. The first ingredient here is the protein powder, and I am using PE Science Vanilla Protein. I just feel like it fits best with the recipe and the blueberry flavor, but if you have a different flavor you want to use, I'm sure it would work great as well. Moving on, we have the liquid egg whites, followed up by 1 whole egg, 3 slices of bread. You could use wheat or white, it doesn't really matter. Fat-free Greek yogurt, which will actually go as the topping. Next up are the blueberries, sugar-free syrup, which actually goes in the recipe as well as a topping at the end. And the last ingredient here is baking powder. It's now time to get into the mixing, but before we do that, if you want to take a second to preheat your oven, it will be baking at 300 degrees. And starting off with the mixing here, we could actually mix most of the ingredients in the same bowl, and I'm starting off by cracking that 1 whole egg in there. I'll follow up that whole egg with 200 grams of egg whites. I'm going to go ahead and drizzle in 32 grams of that sugar-free syrup. I'm now going to throw just 2 grams of baking powder in there now. Throwing in a splash of milk, measuring that out at 50 grams. I'm throwing 20 grams of the vanilla protein powder in there now. This is actually the last ingredient I'm going to add in now before we mix, and that ingredient is 2 grams of sucralose. Of course, if you have another sweetener, that would work just as well. I'm now going to give it a good mix and just mix this a little extra thoroughly. You know protein powder, of course it's going to get clumpy, so just be sure to get as many of the clumps out as possible. It probably won't be perfect or anything, but it'll still make a huge difference. I'm actually going to go ahead and break out a pie dish for this recipe. Whatever you want to bake this in, I'm sure it'd come out great, whether that being a 9x9 pan or any sort of pan that you randomly find in your cupboard. I just like the pie dish for this recipe. Just give it a good spray with the cooking oil, and then you can actually proceed to transfer that mixture into the pie dish. We're not done, of course, though. We're going to take out a separate bowl and measure out 100 grams of blueberries. Don't mind me here, these blueberries are on the verge of spoiling, so I just got to take a moment to pick out all of the blueberries that are actually good. It's worth the effort here, knowing the pain from having to run to the store mid-recipe. And in a shocking turn of events right here, we're actually going to throw these blueberries into the microwave and microwave them for 40 seconds. Once you're done microwaving those blueberries, you could proceed to transfer them into the pie dish. Hopefully that whisk that you used earlier is not in the sink already, because you're still going to need it again to whisk these blueberries into the mixture. Nothing crazy or anything, just make sure they're all evenly spread out. And the last step here before we throw this into the oven is take those 3 slices of bread that I mentioned earlier and rip them up into tiny pieces and throw them into the pie mold. You don't have to focus on placement or anything for now, just rip those tiny pieces and throw them in. As you can see here, I got a mountain of the ripped up bread slices, and I'm just going to press them down and spread them out evenly throughout the French toast bake. Just focusing on making sure that any of the bread that's sticking up and not submerged in the water is pressed down and starting to soak into the mixture. I'm even just using the full length of my hand here to just press it down and trying to get the most even surface there on the top. Now time for the best part, placing it in the oven and going about your day. Well, not quite, but at least you could knock out a chore or two because this thing is going to have to cook for 30 to 35 minutes. I just pulled it out here after 35 minutes and this thing is going to be smoking hot. So I advise you to just take a little patience and wait a short period of time just so they could cool down and you could have the full experience of enjoying this. After I finished cooking it, it ended up just plopping out nice and easy right onto the plate. And if your mouth isn't watering just by looking at it right now, I probably don't have anything else on my channel that would please you. You could even take the moment here to decorate this beauty and plop on that Greek yogurt that I was talking about earlier and spread it around just like you would a pizza. And of course, you can't forget to hit it with a drizzle of the sugar-free syrup. And there you go, your breakfast is complete. Not only is this recipe a great alternative to traditional French toast, but I think it completely changes the French toast game. And it may even be insulting to even put this in the same category as French toast with how completely different this tastes and feels. French toast bake though is just the best way I could describe it, but the only way that you could truly see this masterpiece is to make it for yourself. And if you do happen to make it for yourself, or you are wondering before you make it, you may be curious about the macros of this thing, and in total for the entire recipe it has 82 grams of protein, 76 grams of carbs, 9 grams of fat, for a total of 680 calories. Of course, it is a French toast bake, so these macros are going to be very similar to French toast. Not that it's a knock or anything, because those macros are of course amazing. Especially if you're eating a high protein diet for the least amount of calories, you can't go wrong with making yourself this recipe. And I think this could even work great for meal prep too. It could be an excellent compromise if you wanted to make an entire batch of batter in the week, and then you could just individually microwave the blueberries and bake it after you're done with that. And it could be a compromise of not wanting to reheat leftovers all the time, but also saving yourself some time in the morning, not having to bake it and just being able to throw it in the oven and it will be ready right there for you. Of course, that's all dependent on your schedule, but I'm sure you will find a way to fit this in your diet. It's really not hard with the macros that are on this recipe. That is all I have for you today though, another successful anabolic outpost recipe in the books. If you did have any questions on anything throughout the baking process, leave them down below and I will be sure to answer them. Otherwise, if you found this recipe both helpful and delicious, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already on the channel. Consider supporting the channel through the links in the description. Other than that though, thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video.